AI mania, which is just basically the unbridled and unchecked embraced use of and endorsement of artificial intelligence to do everything for us, create what I call reality collapse. This idea that we can no longer trust our own eyes or our senses, and in some senses don't even want to.
Welcome to the Enduring Church Podcast, hosted by Nathan Castleberry and Michael Davis, helping pastors grow their churches while equipping the body to love their neighbors. Yeah, their literal neighbors. Hey, oh, you're way better looking than Nathan. How's it going?
He's a pretty good-looking guy, actually.
He actually is. Hey, thank you, Abdu. Listen. I'm super excited to have you on this. Unfortunately, for those listening, Nathan had some stuff come up, but we decided to. And this is take number 2, Abdu. So I kind of messed up the last one, but we just wanted to have you on the show. This is a topic that you're writing a book on, and for those of you guys can see the title of the episode, but. I'm really grateful to have you on. If you could you tell our listeners, if they don't know who you are, just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me on, Michael. It's always a good time to spend time with you and miss Nathan, but I hope that his throat heals and all the things he has to take care of are taken care of well. So Abdu Murray, I am the president and founder of Embrace the Truth, which is a apologetics evangelism ministry. We're primarily evangelists, really, but we use apologetics to do our evangelism because apologetics was a huge part of the way people evangelized me. I come from a Muslim background. I was raised as a Shia Muslim up until the age of 27 when I gave my life to the Lord. It took me 9 years to wrestle with the various claims of Jesus and whether or not they were historically, scientifically, theologically, and philosophically tenable. But ultimately, it wasn't just the intellectual, but also the existential and emotional satisfaction of the Christian faith, all wrapped up to speak to the whole person, that got me to bend the knee, as it were, and become a Christian in the year 2000. So I've been following the Lord for 25 years, going on 26 soon, and started Embrace the Truth really as a side project in 2004. I was a full-time lawyer. I was a partner at a major law firm in the Detroit area. I'm a sort of a natural-born advocate. I just, when I believe something is true and has evidence behind it, I want to present the case. That's the profession I was in, and that's actually the mode of ministry we've done. Well, along the way, invitations started to come and opportunities to minister started happening, and we went into full-time ministry in 2013. And have been doing full-time ministry ever since then. So our mission is to offer the credibility of the gospel to every questioner we encounter, because we don't believe in answering questions. We do believe in answering people, and that's the fundamentals behind Embrace the Truth. So yeah, that's the nutshell version of it. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you for checking out the Enduring Church Podcast on YouTube. If you could do us a favor, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to make sure that you're aware whenever a new episode drops. Also, if you got some time, give us a thumbs up and also leave a comment. Really helps us with the algorithm. Well, now back to the show. It's awesome. I've known you I think we've met in 2017. So we've known each other for a long time. Abdu, you're a dear friend, and I am excited to talk to you about AI. It's funny. I had a conversation with a friend of mine. We were talking about AI, and he told me a story about an interim pastor. I'm not going to mention names or anything like that, where he, obviously being an interim pastor is difficult, but, anyone who writes for a living, which I know you do, and I do as well, can spot when AI writes copy. It's just, it's pretty easy. And the guy that I know writes for a living, and he noticed that the sermon was like entirely written by an AI. And he called the interim pastor out on it and said, this was 100% written by an AI, wasn't it? And the pastor actually did admit that he used AI to not only write it, but he actually read it out basically like with his head down and just read the sermon. And it was one of those things where it's like, AI is just permeating everything, the culture and everything. And I just, it's starting to impact the church. We're actually starting to see there's people talking about, chatbots, for evangelism and all these things. And I was talking to Nathan, and this was so sad that he's not here, but I was talking to Nathan. I was like, I kind of know a guy's writing a book about this.
Yeah.
And I said, because the title of this episode is "Should Pastors Be Scared of AI?"
Mm-hmm.
And I think that because of the work that you're doing and how you're really working within the local church, because a lot of the things that you're doing and the places you're talking are supporting local churches. I just thought, man, it would be awesome to have you on the show.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. And I do think this is, so the book is much broader than the church use and interaction with AI. In fact, I wrote the book with an eye towards actually secular people or non-Christians of various stripes, or people who are nominally Christian or who are like Christian adjacent. So the central premise of the book is that there are at least two cultural forces. One I call AI mania, and the other one I call bioclasm. And bioclasm, this is the short part, this is not a part of our discussion, but bioclasm is you take iconoclasm, and icons are the images of the shared understandings and meanings of the past. And iconoclasts tend to destroy those in favor of some kind of new paradigm. Sometimes that's good. Oftentimes it's not so great. And with bioclasm, what we have is a destruction of the idea of that biology matters, and that human beings are not only spiritual beings and mental beings, but we're also physical beings, but it becomes sort of a plaything. And that's manifested itself in gender ideology. That coupled with AI mania which is just basically the unbridled and unchecked embraced use of and endorsement of artificial intelligence to do everything for us, create what I call reality collapse. This idea that we can no longer trust our own eyes or our senses, and in some senses don't even want to. So how do we resist reality collapse? And the central premise of the book is to analyze culture and then offer biblical wisdom to a secular culture about how we can anchor ourselves in understanding what it means to be made in God's image and who that God actually is, as a way to get us to fall in love with reality once again. So we can use AI responsibly, so that we can talk to people who have gender dysphoria, for genuine gender dysphoria, by the way, which is pretty rare, but talk to people who have identity issues with compassion, but also not compromising truth. So that's the general gist of it. So the book is broader than this, but I do talk about it in the book, the church, and how one, we just are not yet ready for this thing, and it's coming. Well, not coming, it's actually quite here. And we need to get up to speed pretty quickly. I quote, of all people, Oprah Winfrey in the book, and because she has an interaction with someone, talking to Sam Altman, I believe it is, about AI. He's the founder of OpenAI, and she says, as I go through on understanding what AI is, as valuable as a tool as it might be, I have to develop what she called a suspicion muscle. We have to start thinking, is this real? Is this something that was generated by a human? Or is this is this news item not even really real anymore? Are those people actually people? And she said, that's no way to live, this sense of suspicion. So I don't want us to live with that sense of cynicism. But at the same time, we have to develop a bit of a suspicion muscle. And the church is a little bit late in going to the gym. So hopefully this book will help, and our conversation will help as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And by the way, it's on pre-sale right now, and it'll be in the show notes. So if anyone wants to buy it, it'll be available there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we need to get to the gym. We need to look like Wes Huff. We don't need to look like we need to be Wes Huff ready for this change. So that actually
Wes Huff has become the Christian Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Dude, he is so ripped, man. I'm like, man, do you think he's natty? He's natty. He's natty.
I think he is. I think
so too.
He's got all his hair, so he's still natty.
Yeah, he's still, and he's not nearly angry enough if he was not.
That's true. That's true.
Let's get to the first question. I think this is a great place to start. Do you think the church, I mean, I guess you kind of said it, But do you think the church is ready for how quickly AI, not just its use, but how it's absolutely shaping culture and
Right.
the potentially the people in their pews?
Yeah, and I think the answer is no, but we can get there. I don't want to freak us out, but we have to be sufficiently freaked out to want to get there.
Yeah.
Um, so the answer is generally no. One of the things I've noticed over the course of 20 years of doing this kind of ministry is that the church tends to be about 5 years behind
Yeah,
cultural
that's
movement.
fair. That's fair.
We'll pick up the slang and we'll do this kind of stuff, but the the problem is that we misdiagnosed the culture, and we're about maybe 3 years now, but about 5 years behind. We still think we're postmodern, and we're not. We're post truth.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but we did not address the social media issue early enough, and then we played triage and we did damage control as opposed to inoculation of what's going on here. With AI, we have a chance still because while it's strongly developed, it still has much more to do and a much stronger way to go. But I think that the issue with the church isn't how do you understand this technology? There's plenty of books to help you understand the technology. And frankly, young people already understand the use of the technology. It's really an orientation of the heart and the mind. Because I don't have a problem with AI. I use it all the time.
Yeah.
I don't use it. I resist the urge. And the urge is pretty strong to
Yeah.
use it for creative generation. I think you can use it for ideas.
Yeah, that's
You
what I
can use
use it to. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can use it to bounce off things, and you can say, "Hey, analyze my writing," but don't use it to do your writing. Don't use it to think of some ideas on your own and then go back and forth with it. You can also have settings, by the way, to make it be brutally honest with you, because
Mhm.
a lot of times it tells you what you want to hear. So you can use it for really great purposes. And by the way, the applications for it, medically and scientifically, are just remarkable. Some of the things it's doing now are great. However, we're not ready for it because I think one thing we really need to teach into our ethics of the church is the value of original and hard work. And what I mean by that is that I think in a church setting, and Protestantism actually is pretty good about this.
Yeah.
It has been historically, I should say. Bring your Bible to church. Don't just hear what the guy on the stage says because he's got some kind of authority beyond what the Bible says because he's got a microphone attached to his face or clipped to his lapel.
Hmm.
That's not a qualification to supersede the Bible. Well, no, there is no qualification for that. But we tend to just trust what he says. And so, and that's fine. We can't be super suspicious, but I don't mean distrust what he says. What I mean is now go do additional study. The sermon is not meant to be a comprehensive substitute for your own delving into the scriptures. And
Right.
we've taken it as that. And I'm not saying pastors are encouraging that. I'm just saying that's human beings. We tend to be path of least resistance creatures. And if a guy who we trust, who's brilliant, who's well meaning, who's anointed by the Lord, all these things can tell us stuff on Sunday, I don't need to worry about it Monday through Saturday.
Yeah.
Um, and that fosters a laziness and a path of least resistance. And that's the kind of attitude that AI mania thrives under because it fosters use of AI to do the work for you. And a lot of the promises too of AI, oh, it'll do this, it'll do that, it'll do this. That's wrong. I will tell you though, a couple of pastors I know have really gotten excited about interacting with people on AI
Yeah.
so that they don't succumb to this whole AI mania thing. And I'll give you an example. Is There was a pastor friend of mine who was having a conversation with someone about some topic. I can't remember what it was, and the person kept on referring to their prayer partner. And the prayer partner was this didn't have a name, and the pronoun usage was a little bit difficult to come by in the conversation. And then my pastor, or not my pastor, sorry, this pastor friend said, who is your prayer partner? And the person said, Chat GPT.
Oh,
And, you know, it goes back to that John Piper sermon that's made the rounds quite a bit when he said, I sat down and I asked Chat GPT to write out a prayer for me in the style of D.A. Carson on the sovereignty and grace of God. And he said, it came back with a beautifully worded prayer that sounds a lot like Don Carson would sound like, and it was theologically accurate. And he said, I want to tell you something. This soulless machine can't pray.
Yeah.
It has no soul. But if you're using the eloquence of your words to determine your worth, value, and the efficacy of your prayers, this machine can beat you, but it can't pray because it has no soul. So your words don't matter. The eloquence of your words don't matter. It's the orientation of your heart. And using ChatGPT as a prayer partner is just that on steroids now. So to his credit, my pastor friend called this person out and said, you can't do that. You can't
Mhm.
replace human connection with a machine that's easy to talk to and won't judge you and all these things. So I don't think the church is ready, in the sense that the church doesn't fully understand the cultural impact and the culture shaping that's happening with AI. It is causing us to not understand what it means to be human anymore. I mean, the number
Mhm.
of young people who are in this identity crisis of what even am I? And then here comes this machine that seems almost godlike. It's everywhere. It seems to know everything, and it can interact with everyone at the same time. Sounds a lot like God in their view. So I think it's a theological rooting in what it means to be human. Oops, and sorry, I hit that microphone there.
No, you're good. You're good.
What it means to be human and who God is and what God actually is that will help us get there. But we need to take this AI culture shaping moment really seriously. And if we don't, we'll just go out as business as usual. And meanwhile, there'll be people in our pews who have been serving the Lord for 20 years and calling ChatGPT their prayer partner.
Yeah.
We have to fix that. And I think it's fixable. It's easily fixable. We just have to get to it.
Yeah, I think I think there's two things. I think number one, that laziness problem is serious
Mhm.
because it's impacting everything from education to, well, to work, and obviously I described an example of laziness when it comes to even sermon prep. But I
Mhm.
think that there's also an extra element to this that that a lot of people don't realize is the untrustworthiness of it.
Yeah.
um, it lies with great frequency and it gets
Yes.
things wrong with great frequency. And if this is going to be an element of of the work that you're doing when it comes to developing and discipling people that are coming into your church with a machine that is sycophantic
Mhm.
and also wrong with like that all the time, it's the reason why I don't use it for analysis, because it just makes stuff up. But if you're
Mhm.
going to trust something, whether it's like a Bible verse or whether it's just the specific meaning, you're not only doing yourself a disservice, you're doing the people in that are attending your church a disservice. I just, I don't know. I think that to your point, and when you said this earlier, you're saying that the mania. I think that this has somewhat of a feel of like crypto when that first came out in like
Yeah.
2021, where
Mhm.
everyone assumed that it was going to impact everything. I noticed that the people who use AI very little are the ones that are very scared of it, and the people that use it a lot are the ones that realize that it's got a long way to go,
Yeah.
and that it's not replacing there's just nothing really creative about it. To what you said earlier, it's soulless.
Yeah.
So, so and it's actually not that good of a writer either. I mean, there's and it's uh, but here's the thing, and this is where I would love to get your counsel on this, because you're here and you're in front of me and you've got nowhere to go. How should when we're dealing with like as far as stuff in ministry or things in the church, how do you see this as a helpful tool, and when do you think it becomes dangerous?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing is to, if to answer that question, I would back up to something you said. I think was pretty important. Is that it doesn't actually create because it's soulless, and this is an important, subtle but very important distinction. Keep in mind, AI generates; it doesn't create.
Yeah, amen.
It cobbles a bunch of stuff together from the internet, from the databases it has access to, and then puts something together based on your prompts. It responds to prompts. It is therefore not creative. You and I will look at a sunset and want to take a photo of it. You and I will experience a song that moves you in a way that otherwise wouldn't move you, absent the circumstances and life things you're going through. And then you and I might write something, whether it's a poem or it's a bit of prose or talk to our wife in a certain way, whatever it is. It's because you're inspired. AI needs a prompt. You don't need prompts. You
Yeah.
respond to the world outside of you and create almost spontaneously. Yes, we're influenced, of course, but AI needs to be told exactly what to write. It won't look at something and say, "What are you inspired by when you see this?" And then suddenly it picks something. It just won't do that. Um, I think where it's helpful is that it can take our inspired ideas and we use our ideas to run through LLMs, for example, and whether it's Midjourney or which is image generation, or Chat GPTs or Copilot, Gemini, etc., to say, okay, I have an idea. I've already written it. I'd love for you to look at it.
Hmm.
Tell me any flaws you see in my argumentation. Tell me any gaps in prose. How about grammar checking? I asserted a couple of facts in here. Can you fact check this for me? But by the way, then go and fact check the
Yeah,
fact
and then you
checking.
need to fact check the fact checker. Yeah,
You
for
do. I
sure.
mean, it's funny because our mutual friend Derek, who's on our staff, and I were just talking yesterday about how disappointed you can be sometimes when you need something quick to be done and you already have something you're working on. You ask AI to help you with it. It helps you with it, and then you realize I have to go and fix all the mistakes it made, which would have taken just as long for me to do it myself in the first place. Happens all the time,
Absolutely.
all the
Yep.
time. I mean, here's an example. Derek and I were doing a podcast. We were doing a Q&A on Islam, including the origins of the Quran and the history behind the Quran. And there's a lot of history there. Now, I have a lot of that collated in my notes and my documents from years and years of research. So I wanted to create a little digest of all of my collections of the Hadith and the Sunnah, which is the life of Muhammad, and the references to it. And so I asked a particular LLM, here's my document. I'd like you to condense this down to focus on these 3 themes as opposed to the 25 themes I have in it, and make sure you retain the source material. It did an okay job of condensing it down to the theme, but all of the citations were wrong.
Yeah.
From a document that had citations in it, it got it wrong. So the dangers are, because it's a machine, you think it handles data, because data sounds like a machinish thing, right? So
Yeah.
we think that because it's a machine, it'll handle data. It may give me bad opinions, but data it can be trusted with. It hallucinates all the time.
Yeah.
And so the danger is over-reliance on it. I think the big danger, though, and this is the part that I hope that church leaders hear me on this, because look, as an itinerant speaker, I love my church. I get to go to my church and be a part of my church. I love the pastor of my church and the leadership there. So I love my church, but I've also been to lots and lots of churches being an itinerant speaker. I've come to learn something from the friends I have who work in the pastorate. It is an incredibly hard job. It is a demanding job that requires a calling. It's not the kind of thing that you just kind of feel like, I got nothing better to do. Why don't I go be a pastor? If for heaven's sake, if that's your thinking, please don't do it.
Yeah.
Um, and I say that because of its difficulty. That means time is of the essence, and along comes this tool, which could help you to gain hours back, and it can if you properly understand it. The danger is that when Sunday is on the horizon and you've done 4 hospital visits that week, and you've had to counsel people 16 times that week and go through budget meetings and do all this stuff, and the Sunday prep, even though you have your designated time for it and you have all that stuff and you have your study time, there comes a time when either a section of a sermon or the whole thing can get written by this thing, and you look at the outline and you're like, oh my goodness, this is actually quite good. And you even say, do it, and you feed your prior sermons into it, and you say, hey, look at my prior sermons and come up with an outline for me to talk about, when Jesus forgives the sins of the paralytic in Mark chapter 2, and it'll come back and it'll be in your style and in your thoughts. Um, and it's easy to justify. I didn't use it to create. I used my own material to feed it so that it could create new things that are really me. Okay. The problem with that is that you are being tasked by the Holy Spirit to be the spiritual um, guide that Sunday through the scriptures. And if you don't infuse that calling into the moment and rely on a machine to do it, you're doing something that sounds informed, um, okay, and good, and it's time saving, but it robs it's denuded of its substance and its power. And once you do it once, it
Yeah.
goes off okay. Doing it twice, doing it 3 times, doing it a bunch of times can really become tempting. So those are some of the dangers I think in using machines to do what the Holy Spirit should be doing, regardless if it's good or not. Its quality is immaterial.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's another danger there is that you're not being pastored to
Right.
every week. So the process that you are of getting into the word, delving into it, seeking the Lord in your sermon prep, that goes away.
Yeah.
So a lot of I don't think that we should also, step away from understanding of how important sermon prep is, even for like self. I mean, listen, every pastor needs accountability. They need people to disciple them as well. But that is how you seek the Lord. And you hear Nathan talking about this a lot. And I've got lots of pastor friends of saying that sometimes it's difficult. And I'm sure it's the same thing for you when you're prepping for, whether it's a debate or whether it's giving a talk. You have to seek God's wisdom and his clarity when you because you want God to use your words to transform lives.
Absolutely.
So
Every pastor I know who I deeply respect has said at some point, either to the congregation or to a friend, while they're preparing a sermon series or after they've delivered it, is that when I wrestled with the meaning of this passage, God dealt with me in
yeah,
some way. And the pastor themselves grows through it. This is just the augmentation of the point you just made. The pastor and leader himself will grow through the process, and then that growth and even that uncertainty, like, look, guys, I just did a study on thus and such, and Lazarus and the rich man, and I'm wrestling with how much of the rich man is in me, and I'm still not quite sure.
yeah,
That's great for your congregation to hear, but if you use the AI to go through it, you're not going to get any of that, and you're going to rob yourself and your congregation of the beauty of what Scripture does to us when we wrestle with it. So there's so much that can be said. Now, having said that, you write a sermon, even an outline, and you want to throw it into an LLM and say, okay, this is my sermon outline. Help me improve a point I made. Did I miss anything when it comes to this? What are the best sources on this and that? There's great software that employs AI, like
yeah,
Logos and other softwares
right.
that can help you with that because it employs AI and it's robust. It's also not biased, typically. It's biblically biased in the sense that it wants to take a look at the best scholarship in its database and apply that for your benefit. But I will tell you, you put a sermon in, and let's say you're talking about identity, and you put a sermon outline into one of the freely available chatbots that are out there. It will tell you what it wants you to say.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget that too. I mean, here's my classic example. I cited in the book too. I wrote an article for Fox News back when the Barbie movie was a juggernaut, and there was Barbenheimer, the Oppenheimer
Yeah,
movie
that's
and Barbie
right.
and all
That's
that.
right.
I wrote an article about the juggernaut that was the Barbie movie because one of the things that uh, they were trying to pull off in the Barbie movie was to point out subtly, but not so subtly, that the biblical creation account of Adam and Eve is sexist because Eve is derivative of Adam,
Right.
and therefore somehow subordinate in a qualitative way to Adam, because Ken is subordinate. There can be no Ken without Barbie, but Barbie can exist without Ken, kind of a thing. And that was meant to just flip the script and show you how awful the Bible is. And then the argument I made in the article was the Barbie movie did you a favor because it actually says when Barbie says to Ken, you have your own value. You don't have to base it on me.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually what the Bible's been saying. And so nice try.
Yeah.
Um, well, that went into and got published, but I was super curious. I was like, hey, this is, I ran it through ChatGPT and I ran it through the precursor to Copilot. and I asked uh, them, okay, write an article from my perspective, critiquing the Barbie movie and blah 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 on this particular point. ChatGPT did it. I would never have turned that in,
Yeah.
but it did it, and it did it consistently with the opinion I have. The Microsoft version gave me a scolding. It said, "Sorry, I can't do that. Many people love this movie, and the tone you're suggesting that I write in would offend people, and blah 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 blah." Now, here's what's interesting, Michael, is that it has no idea if I just want to keep that to myself or publish it.
Yeah.
But it told me it would not do it. I asked Copilot very recently, as my daughter and I were talking about pro-life issues, I said, give me the best pro-choice arguments and then give me the best responses to those.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me the pro-choice arguments. It would not give me the pro-life arguments until I
Yeah.
had to repeatedly scold the LLM. So that's some of the dangers too. It will tell you what it wants you, not it wants you, but what its programmers want you to think. So you have to be
Yeah.
careful of that.
Yeah. And it's funny it's sometimes even more insidious than that. I have an experience where, and I've noticed that it'll overplay. And this is,
Mm-hmm.
again, the reason why this goes back to pastoring and to the church is that the people in your pews, the people who are attending your church are being inundated with this type of information, but it'll either overstate a fact or it'll understate a fact. And I have two examples. The first one is, I was curious. I asked ChatGPT, like, what would happen if a tactical nuclear weapon was used in Ukraine? And it said that it would cause nuclear winter, which
Mm-hmm.
is silly. And I called it out. I yell at my AI all the time because I like to talk to it, either the voice one. And I said, this doesn't make any sense. First of all, it'd probably be a tactical nuke, and we used to do testing all the time. And I said, why would you? And then like it always does. Oh, you're right. Thank you for calling me out on that. You're right. It probably wouldn't do anything like that. But I did a follow-up question, and I said, why did you tell me, knowing that this was not the case? And it said something very interesting. It says, I wanted to drive home the seriousness of something like this happening.
Yep.
And I was like, and I responded going, do you understand how terrifying that is?
Mm-hmm.
Because and they said, yeah, I understand. I'm sorry. I'll try to be more straight to the point. But I was like, you literally made up a fact in order to drive home a feeling and an emotion in me,
Mm-hmm.
in order to do that.
Mm-hmm.
These are the things that people who are interacting with the information that they're consuming every day, maybe not even Christian,
Mm-hmm.
but that is going to impact the way they view the world.
Absolutely. And this goes to really, in some ways, in many ways, I think it actually goes to the a proof of what the Bible has been saying for 3,500 years and longer, is that human beings have a sin condition. And remember, AI did not create itself. Its databases are not selected by the AI. There's
Yep.
not some unbiased, sort of machine mind that picks the things it wants, and it doesn't have access to everything. It doesn't, at least not yet. Which means that its developers have an agenda,
Yeah.
because every human being does. They're not necessarily evil people who are out to get you. It's that bias creeps into everything. Every human being has it, and it creeps into everything we do. And from the articles we choose to read, to the ones we choose to share, to the evidence we choose to um, consider as strong or not, we all have to deal with our own confirmation biases, and that includes the programmers of AI, whether it's the code itself or it's the databases that they draw from. And so what you're describing is a result of selective algorithms that pick certain things to draw from and then make conclusions on. But it's extremely paternalistic. And
Yeah.
this is the important part, is that it doesn't want you to have a certain opinion that maybe it wouldn't be so bad if, pick your fact.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, it won't be, but we'd like you to think it is so that you don't do said behavior. Well, uh, so don't let it do your thinking for you. This is the other part that I go strong in the paint on this in the book is, and there's more data coming out all the time on this. In fact, one of the dangers of writing a book like this is that by the time it goes to print, it's 6 months behind
Yeah.
some of the latest cultural impact and research. And AI is developing at a breakneck speed, which is why I wrote it from a cultural perspective and a human impact perspective rather than a technical perspective. Because, frankly, by the time you and I are done talking, there's new developments
Yeah.
in AI stuff. But the cultural thing is still happening, and I'm it's not like a brag, but I'm gratified in a serious sense, in a not so happy sense, that the things I thought were happening are actually happening. So OpenAI, Microsoft, MIT have been doing studies. They're still in their infancy, but the preliminary results are disturbing. Is
Yeah.
that people who over rely on LLMs, large language models, which is ChatGPT and Copilot and all these things, to do their work, especially the generative work, the creative work for them, are reporting and testing poorly on memory retention, cognitive ability, and creative ability.
Yeah.
They're also reporting the more they interact with the voice version of it, they're also reporting more and more senses of loneliness, which is interesting because it's the voice version is meant to humanize the thing, and yet somehow we recognize this thing is not really a person. And
Right.
we start talking to it like a person. I think it augments our sense of loneliness because it's like, down deep inside, I'm I got a computerized buddy, and that means
Yeah.
that I'm not forming real relationships. So that stuff is happening, and we're ceding our humanity to the algorithms. From Tomas Chamorro Premusic, who did extensive studies on this, to the latest research on this kind of thing. And you think about it, we've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
Um, when you look at when you watch Netflix, it tells you, hey, because you like this, you might like this. Well, where did it get that from? It's pattern recognition. The
Right.
AI that fuels it um, recognizes your patterns, suggests a movie based on the kind of things you like, and every time you say yes or no, you're feeding it more information
Right.
about your patterns. And say, not today. Okay, well, it sounds like on Thursdays you don't actually like this kind of thing because probably Thursdays are your long days. So what you like is a mindless comedy. How about The Office instead? And this kind of stuff. And so it figures out your patterns. And the more you tell it yes or no, the more it figures you out. And then you start to respond to it automatically. And that sounds an awful lot like a robot.
Yep.
And so that is the other danger of it. And so in churches, we have to have our leadership foment a sense of critical thinking, not a critical spirit,
Yeah.
critical thinking, and use it for research. Please do double check it. Double check it. Will it save you some time? Yeah, it'll save you some time, but don't rely on it to save you hours. Don't do that.
Yeah.
The hours are needed. They're necessary. We need you to do that. And then that will help to foster that kind of thinking in your people. And from the sermon, from the pulpit, if you use it and it's wrong, say it from the pulpit so that people will hear a trusted source say, hey, I had to fact check this thing quite a bit. You
Yeah.
should too.
Yeah. So let's get practical because we're getting towards the end of this. Let's say the pastors are going, oh yeah, no, I don't do this. I don't. I'm in the Word. I'm like we've got policies against using this for sermon prep and for discipleship. How do you disciple Christians? I mean, you've talked a little bit about this, but let's go like seriously practical. How do you disciple people who are starting to deal with the loneliness? They're starting to deal with kind of the brain rot,
Mm-hmm.
that are starting to become overly reliant, probably using it for Bible studies and for cross-referencing. How do
Mm-hmm.
you protect and disciple folks? And frankly, how do you point to Jesus when everything is turning? I mean, I would say arguably this is, if it does keep going at the pace that it's going
Yeah.
to be transformational
Yeah.
as compared to this. So how do you just protect the people who are coming to your church?
I think a big part of it is inculcating, and a lot of churches do this well. We just have to really, I think, double down on this, and then actually in our children's ministries, in our family-based ministries, marriage ministries, small groups, whatever it might be, from the pulpit, really, really, really focus on connection and community. Probably more than ever. Probably more
Amen.
than ever.
Love
You
it.
you focus on that, and you get people to put their phones away, have phone-free zones. It would be great if we had small groups where, hey, the minute you walk into this small group, we're going to have a phone closet, just like they do in some schools, and say we're not going to look at it the whole time we're here, and we're going to open an actual Bible and flip through actual pages as we study. So please bring a paper Bible with you. Get that tactile sense. Make it a real part of your small group study, your youth group stuff. Have the phone lockers. Get these kids to detox from this thing,
Yeah.
and then the connection will be really real. And here's just, if I could ever so briefly say, here's a bit of an anecdotal sense of what I see as the evidence of this, that our need for connection will thrive once we start to actually touch a person, look at a person in the eye, hear their voice, and then not be distracted by the ball and chain of our smartphones and the AI that attends to them. During COVID, when everyone was on lockdown and no one could go to anybody's house and see anybody and all this ridiculousness, um, uh, our kids were sitting in our family room, and our pastor came by, him and his wife, to drop off a book because my daughter wanted to get into a certain Bible study that my pastor had a copy of.
Yeah.
When the doorbell rang, you'd have thought Santa Claus had come, because everyone jumped up and they said, "A person!" And
Yeah.
they wanted to actually look at a person and talk to a person. Um, that sense of connection is there in all of us, and doing those kind of things in our discipling and in our programming, I think will really help us to connect with one another again, and then we'll want that feeling more.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think that's where the church can really be a light, because as the world starts disassociating, we start focusing on community. We start focusing on not neglecting the gathering of believers.
Mm-hmm.
We start focusing on being human to one another and to love those who are. And the interesting thing is that I think there's so many connections to the other trends that have happened over the last 50 years, whether it's like the emergence of social media, where people were starting to get disconnected,
Mm-hmm.
the stuff that you were talking about in the book about the fact that, like, the bioclasm, is that how, did I say it right?
You said it
uh
right. Yeah.
yeah. The fact that there's no truth in regards to your body, but the the church and the Bible, and it's so counter that I've said this, it's like the darker the world gets, the brighter the light of Jesus gets.
Mm.
And I think that we are supposed to be that lampstand, right? Let's be different. Let's not and again, it's not, there were people who were against the internet. Logos, there were lots of people who were against, like, it's all these books are good enough for my grandfather, they're good enough for
Yeah.
me. But I think so, it's not like to completely disassociate, but I think that if you hit the nail on the head here, is that if we love well, if we love the people who are coming to our churches, and I think that's like, I think that's how we combat this, because we're more human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would close that thought with something that I didn't come up with. It was Mary Harrington. I was listening to her at a conference in London, and she said, when you use artificial intelligence and technology, for example, some artificial intelligence that can teach a child how to speak Italian, what you're doing is you're helping the child connect with Italians. So a
Hmm.
British kid can connect with Italians. When you give someone an AI friend, you teach them to connect with no one.
Yeah.
And I
Oh.
thought that was so brilliant. And that's exactly the part of the problem. So we can use this stuff responsibly, resist the urge to use it a lot, and develop more and more human connection in our discipleship, and encourage it. Speak about it as often as you possibly can, without diluting the message otherwise from the passages of Scripture. But speak about it in your small groups and in your curriculum. I think we can do well. And I think if we emerge as a church emotionally healthy in the AI age, we will stand out for our saltiness and our brightness.
Yeah.
So I love the imagery you use about the darker the world gets, the brighter the church becomes. Well, this is an opportunity.
Yep. Amen. What a great way to end it. Abdu, again, I just want to tell you guys, Abdu, Derek, the whole team, Nicole, everyone, Embrace the Truth, is just, they're doing such great work. So please make sure you check them out. I'll have all the information down in the show notes about what you guys are doing. But just want to tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and helping us kind of talk this through. It's been an absolute blessing to have you on.
Well, thanks, Michael. It's always a joy to spend time with you and to talk about some pretty fun stuff.
Awesome. And I hope that, we're this is it's a little bit of a sneak peek. Next season is going to be a lot more. We're hoping to have a lot more guests on. So I hope that you'll be able to come on and help us wrestle with a lot of stuff. You're one of my smartest friends. So I would definitely
You need better friends.
Well, listen, hey, Abdu, thank you again. Thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you guys in a couple weeks. This has been the Enduring Church Podcast with Nathan Castleberry and Michael Davis. We'll see you next time.